What is Brazil's coaching staff hiding? A new tactic that will shock the world at the 2026 World Cup. Have you ever wondered what really goes on in the minds of an entire nation when football isn't a game, but something akin to an obligatory religion? At such moments, elation mingles with a dull unease. It was sticky and stuffy in Rio de Janeiro on May 26, 2025. Carlo Ancelotti had just arrived, looking a little rumpled after the final against Real Madrid. A closer look revealed a tiny stain on the collar of his shirt, either from sauce or champagne. He had officially accepted the challenge that was supposed to shake up the Selecao. No mountains of gold or grandiose promises at the first press conference. The Italian simply sat down in a chair, which creaked unpleasantly under his weight, and asked for a very strong coffee. No sugar. He didn't drag it out. He immediately rolled out a list of names for the 2026 World Cup qualifiers. A buzz immediately arose in the football corridors, where the scent of expensive perfume and old gossip filled the air. Ancelotti had clearly chosen his own. Casemiro and Mateus Cunha were his bets. Fans in the bars argued, waving their hands. Why bother with experience when he needed young blood? But Carlos simply chewed his gum. He had 5 Champions League titles in his suitcase. 5. It wasn't just a number, it was a habit of picking up where others had fallen. The locker room grew quieter. The players looked at him as if he knew some important secret, but was in no hurry to share it. For Brazil, this wasn't just a change of formation. It was an attempt to stop being perpetually second best. While the streets were buzzing with his every gesture, it became clear, since May 26th, football here had become governed by logic, not just emotion. The world saw the first results of this work faster than anyone could finish their caipirinha. The national team traveled to Ecuador. High altitude, thin air that made your temples pound like a little hammer. The match ended 0-0. The crowd, expecting a carnival and a hail of goals, let out a disappointed murmur, but behind those boring zeros lurked something else. After the final whistle, Vinicius stood for a long time on the sidelines, wiping his face with a dirty towel. "Listen," he said to a journalist who almost shoved a microphone into his eye. We need a little more time. We're still adjusting. The maestro demands strange things, but they work." It wasn't a fluke draw. Casemiro became a grumpy but effective watchdog in midfield. He shut everything down. The Ecuadorians thrashed about, trying to come up with something, but they kept hitting a wall. Ancelotti spent the entire match on his feet, adjusting his tie, which kept slipping sideways in the wind. He quickly scribbled in a notebook with a stubby pencil and occasionally called the players over to whisper a few words, covering his mouth with his hand. No fancy gestures for the cameras. While the stands waited for a miracle, he built a collective press, testing how the players moved when their lungs burned from lack of oxygen. That goalless draw in Quito under a gloomy sky became the first sketch. The foundation for 2026 was laid precisely like that, through sweat, shortness of breath, and an ugly, viscous game. There, among the mountains, the construction of something very reliable began. And this secrecy, this attention to detail, like the way a defender places his foot when turning, only confirmed the Italian had come not for applause, but for results. If you want to hide an entire national team from prying eyes, you don't need to go to the desert. You need to go to New Jersey. Columbia Park in cozy and indecently quiet Morristown will soon turn into something between a closed military facility and a monastery. The choice of this location for the World Cup base in 2026 wasn't the result of lengthy meetings in high offices. One frowning glance from Carlo Ancelotti decided everything. The Italian personally arrived here while the morning dew still lay on the fields and meticulously, step by step, measured the distance from the dressing rooms to the edge of the field. His shoes, always polished to a shine, quickly became covered in dust. The Red Bull representative accompanying him, a young man in a too-tight jacket, was visibly nervous and kept adjusting his tie. He tried to explain the innovative irrigation systems, but Ancelotti merely interrupted him with a curt question about the water pressure in the showers. He didn't care about architectural refinements. He was interested in whether the players would be cramped. "Here, we plan to install the latest generation cryo chambers," the representative stammered, pointing to an empty corner. "Put a coffee machine there." "A good one," Carlos said without even turning around. The Italian was pleased, although he didn't show it, merely thanking him dryly for the tour. Columbia Park is currently in a state of uproar. The large-scale renovations aren't just about painting walls. Construction workers in sweaty t-shirts are resurfacing the lawns, bringing them to the condition of a pool table, and installing exercise equipment that looks like parts of a spaceship. Fuck. While the exterior is being painted, a stifling atmosphere of secrecy is already taking shape inside. This is no longer a public space, but a sealed laboratory. In football's backrooms, where news travels faster than a ball after Roberto Carlos' kick, they whisper that this is where Ancelotti and his staff are implementing those closed dribbling drills. These strange, almost mechanical exercises that seem pointless from the outside, but in reality, turn footballers into robots capable of controlling a ball in a coffee cup. But if Columbia Park is the muscle, then the brains of the Selekeo are hidden a little further away in Basking Ridge. The Ridge Hotel looks like a place for very boring conferences, and that's exactly it. Carlo chose this place with the cold calculation of an accountant. In the frantic schedule of 2026, every minute on the bus is a minute stolen from life. Short trips to the stadiums prevent the players from turning into sleepy zombies peering through the glass windows at New Jersey. At the Ridge, everything is geared toward one goal: conserving energy. The carpets are so thick that the footsteps of Case Moreau or Vinicius sink into them without a trace. Behind this respectable calm, where the scent of expensive wood and a hint of chlorine from the pool lurks feverish work. In the coaching staff's rooms, the lights don't go out until 4 in the morning. There are no cigarette butts. Ancelotti is watching his health, but the number of empty espresso cups alarms the maids. The Italian and his analysts, glued to their monitors, dissect the games of their Group C opponents frame by frame. Morocco, Scotland, and Haiti. At first glance, it seems like a walk in the park. But Carlo knows, it's on walks like these that people most often sprain their ankles. "Look at him," Ancelotti says to his assistant, pointing to the screen where the Scots left back takes an extra step when swinging his ball. "He always leaves that gap. 5 centimeters. That's enough." The assistant quickly jots something down in a notebook with a stub of pencil. In the corner, the air conditioner hums quietly, while the players sleep, dreaming of the Gold Cup. Here, in the sterile silence of Basking Ridge, scenarios are simulated that are designed to paralyze any defense. Every weak spot, every misstep by the opponent is entered into a database. This isn't just preparation, it's a hunt. And when the summer of 2026 arrives, the world will see not just a Brazilian carnival, but a meticulously calibrated, almost surgical plan born in these quiet corridors. The Italian maestro doesn't believe in luck. He believes that even Haiti can be a problem if you don't know which foot their center back starts with. Here, among the New Jersey pines, a silence is forged that, a year from now, will explode with the triumphant roar of stadiums. A storming of the silent hotel rooms isn't always about pretty charts on whiteboards. Sometimes it's simply a pile of scribbled-on napkins and the heavy smell of cold coffee that the maids can't get rid of quickly. When the draw assigned Morocco, Scotland, and Haiti as the group opponents, Carlo Ancelotti didn't even look up from his notepad. He barely raised an eyebrow. For him, this wasn't a cause for celebration, but simply a set of input data. While fans in Rio are already drawing flags on their cheeks and arguing over how many goals will fly into Haiti's net, the coaching staff is dissecting these opponents with the cold grace of pathologists. The maestro believes this is the perfect setup for a tactical buildup. Slow and viscous, like a good sauce. In the summer of 2026, the world will witness not carnival, but dry, almost mathematical logic on the pitches of the United States, Canada, and Mexico. The World Cup final is scheduled for July 19th, and that date is circled in bold red on Carlo's calendar. But the path there lies through the methodical destruction of the top 3. In this game of chess, where the pieces sometimes act up and demand new boots, Ancelotti already has those who will take the field even if the sky falls into the ocean. He has officially confirmed. Case Moreau and Mateus Cunha are the core. They are guaranteed to start against all 3 teams in the group stage. Carlo, Cunha's left shoelace keeps coming undone. It distracts him, muttered one of his assistants, looking at his tablet. Ancelotti didn't even look at him. Have him tie it twice, or he'll stick. He should be burning down the flank, not looking at his feet. Casemiro's experience will be that heavy anchor in the new 4-3-3 formation. While Casemiro cements the center, Cunha must shock the Scottish or Moroccan defenders with a single touch. The entire staff, including David Ancelotti and the silent Kaka, who often just sits in the corner with a tablet and drinks tasteless warm water, is working to turn these games into a testing ground. The secret developments they're tinkering with in New Jersey must work like clockwork. Such a bid for world domination comes at a price. Very high. Dry numbers here turn into some kind of exorbitant weight that presses on the shoulders. 10 million euros a year. That's how much half the Italian is eager to please, and this officially makes him the highest-paid national team coach on the planet. The Brazilian Football Confederation agreed to this without batting an eyelid. For them, Carlo is the only real ticket to the Hexa, to that sixth star who has become something of a religious cult in the country. Since May 26, 2025, when Ancelotti signed his signature, he ceased to be just a coach. He became a hope. In the offices of Rio de Janeiro, where the air conditioners roar as loudly as those at the training ground in New Jersey, they understand. A genius of such caliber doesn't work for free. This record salary isn't just money, it's insurance against failure. To keep the maestro from relaxing, although it's hard to imagine Ancelotti relaxing, the contract includes a clause, a bonus of 5 million euros for winning the final of 2026. 5 million for one evening in July. This forces the staff to work tirelessly, studying even the way Moroccans tie their shoelaces and which foot a Haitian defender uses when pressing. Every detail, from the British style of dice to the subtleties of North African dribbling, is thrown into the firebox of the Brazilian machine. Looking at these sums and Carlo's insistence on a perfect pitch, all of Brazil is starting to believe. A sixth star no longer seems like a dream. It seems inevitable, a matter of time, and a perfectly brewed espresso. Negotiations about the future only confirm that this is a long-term goal. Confidence in the future is reinforced not only by million-dollar bonuses, but also by down-to-earth, tangible steps. Immediately after his short winter break ended, Carlo decided it was time to put an end to the ambiguities. On January 22nd, the plane carrying the Italian maestro gently touched down in Rio de Janeiro. The heat at the airport was so intense it felt like you could cut the air with a knife, and the humidity instantly turned starched collars into wet rags. His arrival instantly became the main story on all sports news, even though the Italian himself simply adjusted his glasses and casually nodded to those greeting him. This wasn't a courtesy call for a couple of photos in front of a statue of Christ. Ancelotti had arrived to sit at the heavy oak desk at the Confederation's headquarters and finally cement the Selecao's status as a dominant force for years to come. The offices smelled of expensive perfume, new leather chairs, and just a hint of old paper. The authoritative publication Globa had already leaked the inside scoop. A firm verbal agreement had been reached between the parties. The partnership was being extended until the 2030 World Cup. "Carlo," said one of the officials, stirring sugar in a tiny cup of coffee, "we need more than just one tournament. We need a system that won't fall apart when one of the boys gets a sore heel." Ancelotti merely raised his left eyebrow. "The system is already here." He tapped his finger on his notepad. "We just have to wait until February." The staff and the Confederation plan to finalize all the technical details and financial details of this mega contract, including maintaining that impressive 10 million euro annual salary in the first 2 weeks of February. For a 66-year-old specialist to have such trust from the most decorated nation on the planet is truly strange and rare. In the history of football, there are almost no examples of a coach at such a venerable age, when many would rather spend their time with their grandchildren or grow grapes in Tuscany, being entrusted with the national team for 2 full cycles in a row. This decision by the Federation speaks volumes. Ancelotti isn't seen as a firefighter brought to extinguish the flames of past failures, but as a wise, sometimes even overly calm, architect. He's building the project of his life, and his presence in Rio on January 22nd marked the final blow to the debate about his commitment to the cause. The planning horizon, stretching until 2030, transforms the current bustle into the beginning of something enormous. While contract details are being finalized, offices are discussing not only tactics, but also the brand of coffee to buy for the training ground. The Ancelotti era begins not with loud slogans, but with quiet conversations in the hallways. The Italians' ambitious plans extend far beyond the immediate North American season. Although Carlo's current contract formally runs until the end of the 2026 World Cup, influential insider Nicolo Schira has already confirmed that an extension until 2030 is effectively in the coach's pocket. The financial terms are the same, 10 million euros per year. These figures aren't up for debate. They simply exist as a given. The Brazilian Confederation sees him as a leader capable of reshaping the Seleção to suit the needs of modern football, where you need to run a lot and think even faster. The locked folders that Ancelotti's staff carries with them already contain sketches for 2030. They contain the names of guys who are now 12 or 13, 10 years, and detailed plans for their integration. Particular attention is being paid to Casemiro. His role in this story is more than just running around in midfield. His experience and icy calm should be the glue that holds together the different generations of players. He looks tired after matches, one of the junior coaches once remarked, nodding at a video of Casemiro. He's not tired. Ancelotti snapped, not looking up from the screen. He just knows where to stand, so he doesn't have to run an extra 10 meters. Let the youngsters run, and he'll do the thinking. The coaching staff is devising a rotation system where the power of the trusty old defensive midfielder will be complemented by the energy of new names. This isn't patching holes, but building a monolith. While the world debates transfers, the great Italian is simply doing his job. The whole world is frozen, because behind the closed doors of training centers, the traditions of Brazilian tricks meet dry Italian mathematics. And this long-term leadership promises to return Brazil to where every Rio resident believes it belongs. Without unnecessary pomp, simply on class and the right moment for the decisive strike. This entire grandiose construction project rests on things far more intimate and down-to-earth than dry signatures on multi-page contracts. At the center of the system is family. When David Ancelotti, Carlo's son, lays out his tattered tablet on the plastic table at the training ground, the air is thick with the tension that only exists between very close friends. His appointment to a key position in the Seleção staff predictably sparked a wave of grumbling in the local newspapers. The word nepotism was thrown at the Italians more often than balls were thrown into the net during warm-ups. But behind this superficial facade of nepotism lies a mechanism they've honed together for years, while living in Madrid hotels and celebrating Champions League victories. It was in Madrid that this duo perfected the system of collective pressing. Now they're trying to instill it in Brazilians, who are accustomed to the ball naturally landing at their feet. It's not always pretty. During morning training sessions in Rio, the heat is so oppressive that David constantly wipes his forehead with the back of his hand, leaving dirty streaks from the grass on his skin. Brazilian fans peering over the fence are slightly perplexed. They're unaccustomed to such a closed, almost hermetic management format. But experts understand, when father and son work side by side, innovations are implemented without unnecessary approvals and bureaucratic red tape. David, look at number 13. He's dropping his body again when he turns, Carlo says quietly, still holding a toothpick in his mouth. The son nods, quickly makes a note of something in the app, and whistles, interrupting the exercise. On the field, Matheus Cunha is becoming the tactical guinea pig. In the new system, he's supposed to be the one who doesn't give opposing defenders a chance to breathe. Cunha sprints across the pitch as if he's being chased by creditors. His job is to aggressively press, the same thing that once made Europe's best playmakers panic and fire passes into thin air. While David meticulously records every move, down to the second, Carlos simply stands nearby, his hands stuffed in the pockets of his tracksuit bottoms. He doesn't shout. He simply directs the process, mixing his old notes with his son's bold analytical insights. In moments like these, it seems family continuity isn't about privilege, but about the ability to understand each other without words when the reputation of an entire country is at stake. This solidarity allows the staff to keep the details of the preparation secret. No leaks. Brazil is preparing to become the most challenging and tactically challenging force at the 2026 World Cup. This closed group has recently been joined by another element, one that has made the atmosphere at the headquarters almost sacred. Amidst the talk of money and tactics, the return millions have been waiting for has occurred. Kaká, the same Ballon d'Or winner of 2007, is now constantly seen at the training ground in a simple white t-shirt, which looks as elegant on him as an expensive tuxedo. His invitation was a pure calculation on Ancelotti's part. The Italian understood that he needed a bridge between European discipline and the wild, unbridled energy that Brazilians call their footballing DNA. Kaká doesn't just stand there for show. He's become something of a personal mentor to Vinicius. Sometimes they sit for long periods on the bench after training, when the sun is just beginning to set, and Kaká explains with his fingers the correct placement of his feet when dribbling at high speed. "Listen," says Kaká, lightly putting his arm around Vinny's shoulders. "At Milan, we weren't just running. We were looking for a void. If you see two players in front of you, it means there's a hole the size of the Maracana behind them somewhere." This advice isn't just a cliché from the past. Kaká is trying to bring the vertical breaks he once used to terrorize defenders in Italy to the modern national team. While fans debate lineups, a new idea is brewing within the team. A powerful intellectual alliance. Kaká teaches young stars how to transform their spontaneous talent into a calculated weapon. He shows them where to pause for a split second to throw a defender off balance. This colossal experience of winning at the highest level gives Ancelotti's staff the depth that Brazil lacked at crucial moments in past tournaments. Now they're not just a team of talented runners, but a project where every move is calibrated by veterans of great battles. And when Vinicius next dribbles, he'll have not only Ancelotti's shadow behind him, but also Kaká's cold calculation. This is the invisible foundation on which a new empire is being built. There's no need to rush. There's still much work ahead, and the staff understands this, finishing their cold coffee between theory and practice. For the forwards to be able to create their own lacework in the opposition penalty area, there needs to be someone at the back who isn't afraid to get their shorts dirty with the first tackle and knows the value of every second of possession. Carlo Ancelotti found this foundation quickly without poring over stacks of analytical reports. While the press wondered if it was time to give way to the young and daring, the Italian simply circled Casemiro's name in a thick marker. For him, it's not a question of affection, but dry arithmetic. Casemiro is 100% reliable, a player whose place in the starting lineup is undisputed, no matter how many matches are on the calendar. It's a sticky, oppressive heat in New Jersey right now. The air is so thick you could cut it with a steak knife. On the training pitch, Casemiro looks like he just stepped out of the shower fully clothed, his t-shirt darkened with sweat and stuck to his shoulder blades. Over 400 appearances for Real Madrid and Manchester United have imprinted on his face a special calm that can't be bought on the transfer market. He doesn't just run, he moves. "Case, you're dropping too deep again," Ancelotti grumbles, adjusting the peak of his cap. "Higher, a couple of meters higher. We need you to see the backs of their midfielders' heads, not the heels of your defenders." Casemiro nods silently, wiping his face with the hem of his shirt, and takes those same 2 steps forward. In his debut game against Ecuador, this worked frighteningly effectively. Casemiro didn't just destroy, he burned space. While the opponents were trying to figure out how to move the ball through the center, the Iron Colonel was already reading their minds. He acted without fuss, intercepting passes with a kind of casual ease, as if he were picking up a bag of groceries from a delivery man. Inside the headquarters, behind closed hotel doors, smelling of pool chlorine and cheap air freshener, Ancelotti and Davide spend hours arguing over how to incorporate this experience into a 4-3-3 formation. This is no longer the classic Brazil that could afford to score 5 goals while conceding 4. Carlo is building a vertical machine. Casemiro is the main controller of this energy. One short, one-touch pass from him transforms a stubborn defense into a blistering attack. This ability to anticipate a play 5 seconds before it happens makes the Seleção's midfield an impenetrable wall ahead of the 2026 tournament. If Casemiro is calm and concrete, then on the flanks, Ancelotti decided to unleash pure adrenaline. And here his choice fell on Matheus Cunha of Wolverhampton Wanderers, another surefire candidate whose name is written in the Italian's notebook immediately after the goalkeeper. Many in Brazil were perplexed. Why Cunha? Why not someone more artistic? But Ancelotti doesn't care about artistry if it doesn't produce goals. Cunha has been through the school of the English Premier League, where every touch of the ball can lead to your fingers being crushed or an elbow in the ribs. At the Columbia Park Training Center, the work on Cunha is almost intimate. One evening, after the main team had already gone to the showers, only Matheus, David Ancelotti, and one of the assistants, dragging a net of balls, remained on the field. One of the balls had a deflated valve, making a strange slapping sound with every kick. "Look at his ankle," David quietly says to his father, pointing to the tablet. "He's making an unnecessary micro-movement before he lunges. If we cut him, the defender won't even have time to blink." The staff is literally dissecting Cunha's game, turning him into the perfect algorithm for breaking into opposing penalty areas. His goals in England and the way he tormented defenses in qualifying matches convinced Carlo. This guy is a motor. Ancelotti relies on hidden dribbling and those awkward runs that break the opposing defense. Whether it's a tense battle against the Scots or a strange, fragmented match against the boys from Haiti, Cunha must be the one who decides the outcome with one touch. While fans expect the national team to dance with the ball, Ancelotti is preparing something more cold and calculating. This will be a football of speed and clinical efficiency, where Cunha is the main executor. In training, he perfects his movements to the point of automatism, ignoring the roar of planes flying somewhere in the distance and the shouts of local boys behind the fence. He will be the surprise that no one will be prepared for when the decisive moment arrives. A moment on the sidelines of the 2026 World Cup, May 26, 2025, a date that will be remembered at the headquarters of the Brazilian Football Confederation, not for its ceremonial speeches, but for the smell of an overheated printer and the sticky feeling of a deadline. Carlo Ancelotti simply placed a list of 26 names on the table. No fanfare, only the dry rustle of paper. This list of players called up for the 2026 World Cup qualifiers was instantly quoted, but few knew that behind each line lay weeks of debate, smoked cigarettes, and gallons of cold espresso. While the press tried to discern a new spark in the list, Ancelotti and his analysts were tinkering with what was known internally as a sieve. It wasn't some kind of magic formula. Endless Excel spreadsheets, where every player was dissected down to the last atom. How far does he run in the 80th minute? How often does he look over his left shoulder before passing? And does he whine if the coach asks him to play 5 meters deeper? The selection of Casemiro and Matheus Cunha was as obvious as the sunrise, but the other positions were selected with the meticulousness of a watchmaker whose hands tremble with fatigue, but whose eye remains sharp. The Federation's office was unusually quiet those days. The windows were curtained, the air conditioners hummed, and a pile of empty yogurt cups lay on David Ancelotti's desk. This entire selection process was dull and tedious, devoid of any romance. It was like endlessly reviewing match footage from championships that Rio prefers to forget. The Italian wasn't just looking for talented players, but those willing to absorb tactics like a sponge, without losing that wild, untamed Brazilian energy that couldn't be contained within any formula. The Federation, of course, played up this air of mystery, creating a haze, but in reality, it was simpler. The staff simply didn't want anyone else poking their noses into their plans. "Dad, look at number 13. David nods at the screen, where the blurry figure of a defender stumbles awkwardly over a bump. He's taking 2 seconds longer to recover than he should. "Leave it," Carlo says dismissively, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "He's got the right angle when he tackles. We'll fix it." The main thing is that he doesn't think he's Pelé yet. Behind this office silence and carefully calibrated lists lies a tangible, powerful incentive. There's a clause in Ancelotti's contract that's rarely mentioned at press conferences, but it warms the heart of any professional. 5 million euros. That's how much Carlo will receive as a bonus if he brings gold medals from the 2026 World Cup to Brazil. It's a huge sum, but for him, it's more a measure of responsibility than just a number in an account. This compels him, in New Jersey, in that damned humidity, to push the guys as if it were their last chance. Every training session becomes an attempt to achieve sterile perfection. 5 million euros transform ordinary work into a personal vendetta against chance. Ancelotti understands perfectly well. In the long race leading to the final in North America, everything can go down the drain in a second. A knee might pop, someone might get a stupid card, or simply burn out. So now at Columbia Park, while the sound of someone starting an old pickup truck with a punctured muffler can be heard through the fence, they're working on Plan B. This isn't just a list of substitutes, it's a backup system, like in a spaceship. Every lineup, every defensive lineup, is run through dozens of scenarios. If Case Moreau can't take the field tomorrow, the system shouldn't simply break down. It should work just as effectively, albeit with a different sound. Carlo personally works with the substitutes, sometimes even taking up positions himself, demonstrating where the toe should be pointed when passing. In Brazil, the Hexa, a sixth title, is already in full swing. The word is heard in barbershops, in bread lines, and in the upscale restaurants of Sao Paulo. The dream of a sixth star has become something physical, almost tangible, like the smell of mown grass at the stadium. And while the nation counts down the days until the tournament, Ancelotti is simply doing his job in Morristown. Without pomp, without grandiose promises. He knows that thousands of small details stand between him and €5 million, from the quality of the pitch to what the third goalkeeper ate for breakfast. And in this mathematical precision, reinforced by iron discipline and a hint of Italian stubbornness, lies the very hope that makes all of Brazil believe that in 2026 the world will once again turn yellow and green. The thirst for a sixth title isn't posters on the walls, but a tangible, almost sticky graph, where every second is like a small island in the Caribbean. The main date is already burned into the retinas of everyone in the headquarters, June 11th, 2026. On this day, the football marathon will officially break loose, cutting the history of the Seleção into pieces. Before and after, the tournament is spread across 3 countries, the United States, Canada, and Mexico, but for Ancelotti and his team, Columbia Park will be their true home, their personal concrete box for the duration of the World Cup. The Italian has memorized the schedule like it's a prayer, though he seems to believe in God less than he does in a well-executed tackle. Group C, kickoff is June 11th. A huge calendar hangs on the wall in the staff office, the dates crossed out not with XS, but with short, angry lines. Carlo, the logistics guys are saying there'll be a traffic jam from the airport to the hotel in Mexico City. David tosses a folder onto the table, revealing a crumpled receipt from a roadside coffee shop. Let them find a helicopter. Or buy bicycles. I don't care, Ancelotti says, not even looking up from the drawing, rubbing his reddened eyes. If we're 10 minutes late for dinner, their sleep cycle will be disrupted. And that's just another reason to whine. This isn't just preparation. It's mania elevated to the absolute. Every hour of activity, every calorie on the third goalkeeper's plate, everything is written into a grand plan. The final is scheduled for July 19th. For Ancelotti, this isn't just a Sunday on the calendar. It's a day when dry mathematics must finally triumph over chaos. All this colossal work, all these sleepless nights in a closed tactical laboratory, smelling of stale coffee and server dust, lead to that one moment when the planet will stand still in front of its screens. Every maneuver is calculated down to the millimeter. Also that the summer of 2026 doesn't turn into another round of national tears on live television. The shadow of the final in Qatar still haunts the corridors of the training ground, like a haunting and deeply unpleasant ghost. In 2022, Argentina achieved what Brazilians considered their birthright. That match with France, those frantic 3-3 runs in regulation and extra time, and then the penalty shootout that ended 4-2, still triggers nervous tics in the Seleção players. For Ancelotti, his neighbor's success isn't a cause for envy, but dry analytical material to be dissected. At the Ridge Hotel, as darkness falls outside the basking Ridge window, and the only sound is the strained hum of the old refrigerator in the corner, the monitors continue to dazzle. Carlos spends hours watching the Argentines press, how they tore into the turf as if their passports were buried there. Look at Leo, Ancelotti points at the screen, where Messi pauses before sprinting. He doesn't run. He waits for the defender to blink. See, 1 second, even less. We can put 2 there, one of the analysts suggests, lazily chewing a slice of cold mushroom pizza. 2 is a hole in another place. We need him to not want to go there. Do you understand the difference? They're picking Messi apart, frame by frame, by the direction of his gaze and the movement of his pupils. This isn't just watching football, it's an autopsy. Ancelotti is searching for the DNA of that other team's victory to create his own, more refined and enduring version. The lessons of 2022 are systematically ingrained into the tactical backbone of the new team. Every mistake by the reigning champions is recorded with the meticulousness of a tax inspector finding an unaccounted cent. Brazil doesn't just want a Gold Cup. They want a convincing rematch that will erase the bitterness of past years. And while Rio's barbershops are arguing over schemes until they're hoarse, here, behind closed doors, under the quiet whisper of air conditioners, weapons are being prepared. No unnecessary pomp, no grandiose words, just methodical, tedious work to ensure that in 2026 the world will once again recognize their right to the throne. Fighting the ghosts of past failures requires not only a clear mind, but also a specific location where theory can be hammered into the grass until it becomes automatic. Morristown became such a testing ground for Carlo Ancelotti. The choice fell on Columbia Park, an area where the Red Bull team, acknowledged maniacs when it comes to creating conditions for superachievement, runs the show. The Italian personally explored every corner of the future headquarters. He walked around the construction site in his expensive shoes, which kept getting stuck in the red jersey clay, and carefully studied the reconstruction plans. At one point, he stopped at an unfinished wall and stared at the workers for a long time. "Will the highway be too noisy here?" he asked, without turning around. "We'll install special screens, Carlo," someone from his entourage replied. "Do so, and check the water pressure in the showers. If the players have to wait 5 minutes for hot water after training, I'll deduct that from your lunchtime." Ancelotti gave the green light, and now the base resembles a disturbed anthill. The constant screech of grinders and the dull blows of hammers can be heard. Work crews are expanding the buildings, erecting additional units that resemble secret laboratories more than locker rooms. A complete replacement of the technical equipment is underway. Exercise machines with names difficult to pronounce are being brought into the base, and equipment capable of monitoring even the blink rate of a goalkeeper under load is being installed. Carlo Poni, the 2026 World Cup won't forgive even the dust on a yoga mat. The infrastructure in New Jersey is being prepared with such a reserve of strength, as if they were planning to wait out a nuclear winter, not just host a tournament cycle. Columbia Park should become an impenetrable fortress for the Selecao, where they will lock themselves away from the world if the playoff bracket forces them to linger in these parts for long. While the concrete walls in Morristown are still drying, unrest has already begun within the team. That match against Ecuador, which ended with a dismal 0 on the scoreboard, was called a disaster by many in Brazil. The press wrote about a crisis of ideas, but inside the locker room the atmosphere was different. Heavy but calm. Vinicius, now viewed as a messiah, sat for a long time on the plane after the game, clutching an ice pack to his knee. Carlos simply didn't have time. He muttered to one of the journalists in the mixed zone, adjusting his earpiece. "We still don't fully understand where to run when Case Moreau has the ball, but positionally, we're different. Before, we were just running around, and now we're looking for space. Do you feel the difference?" Despite the lack of goals, the players sense that the old, chaotic Brazil is dying. It's being replaced by a dry, calculating one. The inner workings of the staff now resemble a jewelry workshop, where Kaká has suddenly assumed the leading role. The Milan legend and Ballon d'Or winner doesn't just strut around. He practically lives on the pitch alongside the attacking group. Behind the closed doors of the training center, the tedious, almost mathematical polishing of Vinicius' dribbling is underway. Kaká explains to him how to adapt his moves to specific tasks, not just to please the crowd. "Vinci, don't spin for the sake of spinning." Kaká gently stops him by the shoulder during another friendly. "See that defender? He's waiting for you to step over. Pause. 2 seconds. He'll move on his own. And if he doesn't move?" Vinicius wipes the sweat from his forehead with the corner of his shirt. "Then he's already lost. Just move to the right." All this is preparation for the summer match against Scotland. Ancelotti knows the Scots will be like concrete piles in defense, and they'll need to be uprooted with speed. Kaká imparts the secrets of ball control at top speed, transforming the natural savagery of the Brazilian attack into a disciplined weapon. The foundation of the maestro's strategy is extreme dynamism. Brazil doesn't want to simply possess the ball, they want to explode zones in a split second. For now, the details are kept top secret, but the way the players are positioned on the field, it's clear. The Seleção are turning into a machine. Every training day in New Jersey becomes a revelation for the players. They no longer have time for carnival. There's only the schedule, the freshly painted walls of the Red Bull training ground, and the cold calculation of a coach who knows exactly how many steps remain to achieve a sixth title. Vinicius and the others can already see the outlines of this formula. It smells not of Copacabana Beach, but of fresh rubber on running tracks and Ancelotti's expensive perfume. While workers in sweaty t-shirts hammer piles into the ground on the training fields in New Jersey, in the offices of Rio de Janeiro, where air conditioners hum hysterically, trying to combat the sticky Brazilian heat, the plans for the entire decade ahead are taking their final, slightly dented shape. The Italian's arrival on January 22nd was accompanied by no fanfare. He simply stepped off the plane, adjusted his collar, and went straight to the office. This is the beginning of a new era that will extend far beyond the coming North American summer. A grandiose, almost terrifying plan, calculated to last until 2030. With an annual salary of 10 million euros, Ancelotti isn't simply fulfilling his contract. He seems to be building a personal empire in which football is subject to a dull but ironclad logic. In the corner of the office, Carlo's son, David, is busily tapping away on a tablet with a cracked protective glass. Kaka is next to him. He looks too formal in his suit, but he and David have become the glue that holds the whole structure together. They are the filters through which the maestro's tactical ideas pass before reaching the field. Behind closed doors in Rio, the discussion of bonuses and compensation structures sometimes resembled a protracted game of chess. Carlo, this clause about flights. The Federation official began, wiping his glasses with the edge of his tie. "Leave him alone," Ancelotti said curtly, looking out the window at a bird flying past. "I'm more concerned about the quality of the turf on the reserve pitches in Curitiba. And turn down that noise, the air conditioner's about to explode." The decision to entrust a 66-year-old Italian with 2 World Cup cycles is almost anomalous for Brazil. Usually, coaches are changed here more often than the weather on the coast, but this time, the Federation decided to take a risk. A planning horizon until 2030 gives Carlo the right not to worry about the occasional misfire. He's building a machine. Heavy, reliable, capable of delivering a double shock to the global community. The goal is simple and devoid of any poetry. Total domination from the 2026 World Cup onward. Years until the very end of the decade. As lawyers meticulously pore over the fine print of the agreement, it becomes clear the Ancelotti era is designed to last. Or at least so that Brazilians can once again sleep soundly, knowing that at the helm is a man who doesn't believe in luck, but in calculation. The world stands still, watching this construction project. 2 consecutive World Cups under the guidance of the same master. This is no longer just sport. It's an attempt to cheat time itself. A forgotten cup of cold coffee and a stack of papers, where numbers and names have intertwined into one complex knot, remain on the office desk, which Carlo intends to cut with his signature calm. If this video interested you, subscribe to the channel to see future reports on the 2026 World Cup.